She hunted happy couples and called it destiny. I brought her destiny to dinner, and he chose me while she watched. The first time I saw Vivian Cross, she was wearing my perfume. Not a similar perfume, not the same brand with similar notes. It was my perfume, that obscure gardenia and amber fragrance I had custom made at a small perfumery in Portland. The same one Andrew said was my olfactory signature on our first night together 7 years ago. The same one he would bury his face in my neck to breathe when he came home after a difficult day. And there she was, at the weekend literary workshop Andrew had insisted I attend, wearing my signature as if it were her own. Allison, right? She extended her hand, her fingers cold against mine. Andrew talks so much about you. It's almost as if I already know you. Her smile was perfect, not too wide, not too intimate, precisely calculated between friendly and respectful. But her eyes had that sparkle I knew well. The same sparkle I saw in the Tiffany saleswoman's eyes when Andrew chose my engagement ring. The sparkle of someone appraising something they desire to possess. Vivian is a relationship consultant, Andrew explained, his hand naturally finding the small of my back, that unconscious gesture from 7 years of marriage. She has a fascinating perspective on romantic narratives in contemporary literature. Relationships are like stories, Vivian said, her eyes still fixed on mine. Everyone has a beginning. Some have happy endings. Others, she paused, tilting her head, others just end when someone better appears in the plot. My skin prickled, but not from the air conditioning. 3 weeks later, I found the first evidence. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an explicit message or a compromising photo. It was a note in Andrew's coat pocket, cream paper, impeccable cursive handwriting. Chapter 7 changed everything for me. We need to discuss this in more depth. V. Chapter 7 of what? Andrew was reading dozens of manuscripts for the master's program, but something about the intimacy of those words changed everything for me, made my stomach churn. I started paying attention, really paying attention. The extra workshop meetings that stretched until 11 at night, Andrew's new habit of showering as soon as he got home, before even greeting me. The way he started using words that weren't his, fascinating perspective, emotional narrative, deconstruction of paradigms, all phrases I had heard Vivian use. And then, on a rainy Tuesday in October, I received a message from an unknown number. You're not the first. Search her name plus Boston plus 2019. My hands trembled as I typed into Google. What I found made the world tilt. Boston Herald article, Scandal at Couples Therapy Office, Professional Accused of Inappropriate Relationship with Client. The photo was old, Vivian's hair was shorter, but it was her. The article detailed how she had been fired from a marriage therapy clinic after 3 different couples accused her of deliberate interference in their relationships. One of the husbands left his wife of 15 years. Another almost did, until the wife found explicit messages. But the lawsuit never went forward. Vivian was careful, always stopped one step before the line that could be legally crossed. I kept looking. Seattle 2020, an anonymous blog from a woman named Only B, describing how a relationship consultant systematically destroyed her 10-year marriage, always positioning herself as just a friend, always planting seeds of doubt, always available in moments of vulnerability. She doesn't steal husbands, B wrote. She convinces them that they were never truly happy, that what they have with their wives is comfort, not passion, that she understands their souls in a way no one else does. Portland, 2021, a comment buried in a forum about narcissism. Beware of Vivian C. She collects marriages like trophies. After she gets what she wants, she discards and moves on to the next. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't insecurity. It was a pattern, a meticulous, repeated, refined pattern. And now it was my turn to be the hunted. That night, I watched Andrew sleep. His hands, which used to unconsciously reach for me during the night, were turned away. His phone, which always stayed on the nightstand, was now under his pillow. Small changes, almost imperceptible. But I saw everything. The anger I felt wasn't hot. It was icy, crystalline. The anger of realizing that my marriage, my home, my life, my 7 years of careful building was just another game for a woman who turned destruction into sport. I grabbed my laptop and created a document. At the top, I wrote, Operation Mirror. If Vivian hunted happy couples, I would bring her own medicine back to her. If she infiltrated lives, I would infiltrate hers. If she used vulnerability as a weapon, I would discover what hers was. And then I would destroy her while she watched, just as she made her victims watch their own marriages crumble. But as I typed, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered something I wasn't ready to hear. What if, in the process of destroying her, you become exactly what she is? I ignored the voice. At that moment, all I wanted was justice. I didn't know yet that justice and revenge were twin sisters, and that it was easy to confuse one with the other in the dark. The investigation began with a lie. Andrew, I said the next morning, pouring coffee into his favorite mug, the one with a Hemingway quote I gave him for our 2nd anniversary, I was thinking, maybe I should participate more in your literary world, that workshop you talk so much about. Vivian seems interesting. He almost spilled the mug. Almost. But I saw it. That split second of panic before the smile formed. Really? I mean, that would be great, Allie. But you always said literary workshops were too pretentious for you. He tried to sound casual, but his voice had that sharp quality that appeared when he lied about eating the last slice of cake. People change, I smiled, and it was genuine, because for the first time in weeks, I was in control. Besides, I want to get to know your friends better, especially Vivian. She seems special. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. 3 days later, I was sitting in an artisan cafe in Pearl District, waiting. Vivian arrived exactly at 3. Punctuality was part of the performance, I realized. Everything about her was choreographed. Allison, she hugged me as if we were old friends. The perfume, my perfume, invaded my senses. I'm so glad you decided to join us. Andrew seems so much more alive when you're around. Interesting choice of words. More alive. As if he was only partially alive when he was with me alone. Coffee, I offered, already knowing her answer. I had done my homework. 3 former victims of Vivian, all found through online forums and careful direct messages. All told me the same thing. Vivian mirrored. She became what you needed her to be. Americano, no sugar, she said, and I smiled inwardly. It was exactly what Andrew drank. Of course it was. We spent an hour talking. She was good, extraordinarily good. She asked questions that seemed genuine, laughed at the right moments, touched my arm with that calculated intimacy that made you feel special. And slowly, subtly, she began to plant seeds. 7 years is a long time, she said, stirring her coffee. You must have a solid foundation. We do. Although, she paused, as if considering whether to continue, forgive me if I'm being intrusive, but Andrew mentioned you have different rhythms. He's so passionate about literature, about deep late-night discussions. You're more practical, pragmatic. My jaw tightened, but I kept the smile. Opposites attract. Of course, but sometimes opposites also drift apart. Her eyes met mine. When was the last time you had a conversation that kept you awake until 3 in the morning? Not about bills or home renovations, about ideas, about who you are deep in your soul. The stab was precise, because she was right. Our recent conversations were about what paint to choose for the living room, whether we should trade in the car, when to visit my parents. When did we stop talking about dreams? But then I remembered. This was her game. To make you question what you had. To make you feel like something was missing. Deep conversations are important, I agreed. But so is waking up every day and choosing the same person. It's holding her hair when she's sick. It's knowing how she likes her coffee without asking. Something flickered across Vivian's face. Too quick to decipher, but it was there. A crack in the mask. "You're lucky," she said, and for a second it seemed genuine. Not everyone finds that. It was then that the message arrived. From Brielle Morgan, the woman from the Seattle blog, the only one who had agreed to talk to me by phone. "I found something. We need to talk. It's about why." That night, Andrew worked late, or said he was going to. I was tracking him now, a discreet app on his phone that I installed when he was in the shower. It wasn't ethical. I didn't care. Ethics were a luxury for people who weren't being hunted. He was at her apartment. I sat in the dark of our living room, looking at the photos on the wall. Our honeymoon in Santorini, the day we bought this house, last Christmas, covered in snow, laughing. 7 years of shared life, reduced to frames on a wall. My phone rang. Brielle. "Are you sitting down?" Her voice was tense. "I am." "Vivian doesn't do this for fun, Allison. She does it because—" Brielle took a deep breath. "Because 20 years ago, she was engaged, happy, planning her wedding, and her best friend, a woman named Catherine, systematically seduced her fiancé. On the eve of the wedding, he left Vivian at the altar, married Catherine 3 months later." My stomach sank. Vivian had a complete breakdown. She was hospitalized for 6 months. When she got out, she changed her name. Before, she was Vivian Castellano, and started this crusade. She's not destroying marriages randomly. She's destroying the happiness that was stolen from her, repeatedly, as if every couple she destroys is Catherine and James again. My God. "There's more," Brielle continued. "Catherine died 3 years ago. Cancer. And James? James is alive, remarried, happy again. Vivian tracks him. She has photos of him in her apartment. Allison, she's not just destroying marriages. She's trying to get revenge on a ghost." I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Vivian wasn't a cold predator. She was a woman so broken that she turned her pain into a weapon. Every couple she destroyed was a piece of revenge against the people who destroyed her first. And suddenly, my carefully planned revenge seemed empty. Because what was I doing? Preparing to break a woman who was already broken. But then I thought of Andrew in her apartment. I thought of the other women, the wives who lost everything. I thought of how pain didn't justify destruction. Vivian had her tragedy, but she chose to turn it into a weapon. She chose to make other people bleed because she bled. And me? I was about to make the same choice. The difference was that I could still stop. The question was, did I want to? If you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share in the comments if you've been through something similar, or if you know someone who was hunted like this. The discovery about Vivian's past should have changed everything. It should have filled me with compassion, or at least understanding. Instead, it filled me with something far more dangerous: clarity. Because pain was no excuse. We all carry scars. The difference was what we did with them, whether we turned them into wisdom or into weapons. Vivian chose weapons, and me? I was about to choose too. I arranged to meet James Castellano. It wasn't hard to find him, a history professor at a small university in Oregon, married to a librarian named Penny, 2 young children. His Facebook life was a cliché of suburban happiness: weekend barbecues, kids' soccer games, birthday photos. We met at a diner outside of town. He arrived nervous, looking over his shoulder as if Vivian could materialize out of thin air. "You said it was about Viv," he began, without even ordering coffee. "What do you want?" The truth. I pushed my phone across the table, showing the evidence I compiled, the articles, the blobs, the pattern. She's been doing this for years, destroying marriages, and I need to understand why. Not the version she tells herself, the real truth. James turned pale. His hands, which had been on the table, retracted to his lap. I was young, he finally said. 24. Viv and I had been together since high school. She was intense. Everything with her was intense. Love, anger, joy. There was no middle ground. And Catherine, he paused. Catherine was the opposite. Calm, easy. Being with her was like breathing after being submerged. So you replaced her. I didn't just replace her. His voice broke. I destroyed her. On the eve of the wedding, Allison, I left a note. I didn't even have the courage to tell her in person. She called me 27 times that night. I didn't answer any. When I finally saw her, 3 weeks later, she wasn't the same person anymore. It was as if I had erased who she was. And you feel guilty. Every day of my life. He finally looked at me. Catherine died without knowing how much I regretted it. And Viv turned into this. I hear things, you know. People who seek me out, ask me about her. I created a monster. My cowardice created this. I returned home with his words echoing. I created a monster. As if Vivian had no agency of her own. As if her choices were his fault. But they weren't. She chose. Every day, she woke up and chose to destroy. Just as I was choosing now. That night, I implemented phase 2. I created a fake profile. A man named Marcus Webb, visiting professor of comparative literature, recently divorced, vulnerable, everything Vivian looked for. It took 3 days for her to take the bait. A message in the online literature group that I knew she frequented. Looking for recommendations on narratives of loss and new beginnings, going through a difficult separation. Her response came in 2 hours. I know that territory well. Coffee? Meanwhile, Andrew was growing increasingly distant. Not physically. He still slept beside me, still kissed my forehead in the morning. But there was a wall now. Invisible, but solid. You're different, he said one night, as we washed dishes together. A 7-year routine that suddenly seemed performative. Different how? More distant, as if you're always thinking about something else. He paused, his hands stopping mid-dishwashing. Are we okay, Allie? The question should have broken me. Instead, it infuriated me. Are we okay? I repeated. Are you asking me if we're okay while you spend 4 nights a week at another woman's apartment? The plate slipped from his hands, clinking against the sink. It didn't break. Nothing broke easily in that house. Everything was resilient, durable, built to last. How did you, he started. Don't insult me by feigning surprise. My voice was calm, dangerously calm. I know about Vivian. I know about the extra workshops. I know about the messages. I know everything, Andrew. He stood there, water dripping from his hands, looking at me as if he were seeing a stranger. It's not what you think, he said, and I almost laughed. The most cliched phrase in the world. Then tell me. She understands me in a way that... He stopped, realizing the hole he was digging. In a way that I don't understand, I finished for him. Because I'm too practical, too focused on bills and renovations? Because I don't stay up until 3 in the morning discussing metaphors? It's not that. Then what is it, Andrew? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that. He took a deep breath. Nothing happened between us. I swear, Allison, nothing physical. But when I talk to her, I feel alive again. I feel seen, not just as your husband or the professor or the guy who pays the bills. She sees me. And there it was, the naked truth. He wasn't having an affair. He was having something worse, an emotional connection that made him question everything we had. And I don't see you? My voice broke for the first time. You see me as the Andrew you married. She sees me as the Andrew I could be. Those words should have destroyed me. Instead, they crystallized me. Because I understood, finally, Vivian's true genius. She didn't steal husbands. She convinced them that their wives had stolen them from themselves. that the comfort of marriage was a prison, that passion and stability could not coexist. And Andrew was believing it. "Get out," I said. "Allie, get out of the kitchen. I need to think." He left, and I stood there, hands submerged in soapy water, looking at my reflection in the dark window. Who was I? The woman who built a life with Andrew, brick by brick? Or the woman who was about to destroy another person in the same way that person destroyed others? My phone vibrated. Brielle. "Allison, I need to tell you something about why I really agreed to help you." Her voice was tense. "It wasn't just because Vivian destroyed my marriage. It was because, after my husband left me, I tried to kill myself. I spent 3 weeks under psychiatric observation. I lost custody of my children for 6 months. Vivian doesn't just destroy marriages. She destroys entire lives." My breath caught. "And there's one more thing I found out," Brielle continued. "Vivian is sick. Stage 3 breast cancer. She started treatment 2 months ago. She's dying, Allison. And I think that's why she's accelerating. Andrew isn't just another target. He's the last." I hung up the phone and looked at my hands in the water. Clean, for now. But what was I about to do? Destroy a woman who was already dying? Or protect my marriage from someone who, even while dying, still chose to cause pain? The line between justice and cruelty had never seemed so thin, and I was about to cross it. Dinner was my idea. "Let's do something special," I told Andrew 3 days after our argument in the kitchen. He was sleeping in the guest room, a silent border between us. Dinner, the 3 of us, you, me, and Vivian. He looked at me as if I had gone crazy. "Allie, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not? If she's so important to you, if you have this deep connection, then I should get to know her better. Really, not in cafes or workshops. Here, in our home." I smiled, and it was the coldest smile I had ever produced. After all, what do you have to hide if nothing happened? He had no answer to that. Vivian accepted the invitation immediately. Of course she did. It was the perfect opportunity to enter the territory, make her presence felt, show that she belonged. I spent 2 days preparing. Not the food, that was secondary. I prepared the trap. First, I invited James. He didn't want to come. "This is going to blow up in your face," he warned me. "Viv is unstable. When cornered, she's dangerous." I'm counting on it. Then I contacted Brielle and 2 other ex-victims, not to come, but to write letters, detailed letters about what Vivian did to their lives, letters that I would place at each setting on the table, like macabre menus. And finally, I prepared the main course, a complete dossier. Photos of her in Boston, Seattle, Portland, copies of lawsuits that never went forward, screenshots of messages she sent to married men. And at the center of it all, a photo. Vivian and James, 20 years ago, radiant in their engagement attire. The night arrived. I wore a red dress, not for seduction, but for war. Red was power. Red was blood. Vivian arrived first, punctual as always. She brought wine, an expensive Pinot Noir. "For the hostess," she said, hugging me. Again, my perfume. But this time, I detected something underneath. Something medicinal, chemical. The smell of chemotherapy she was trying to mask. For a second, I felt something akin to Kitty. Then I remembered Brielle in psychiatric observation. The other women whose lives were imploded. The way Vivian was systematically convincing my husband that our marriage was a cage. Pity evaporated. "Okay, Andrew was finishing getting ready," I said, guiding her to the dining room. "We have a few minutes. Sit down." She sat, and that's when she saw it. The letter at her place setting. Her name, written in elegant calligraphy. "What is this?" she asked, but her voice already had that tense quality. She knew. Somehow, she knew. "Open it." Her hands trembled, and it wasn't a performance. She opened the envelope and began to read. I watched the blood drain from her face. I saw the exact moment she realized I knew. Everything. "Allison, she began. Not yet. I placed my hand over hers. Wait. The doorbell rang. Andrew came down the stairs at the same moment I opened the door. James was there, older, more tired, but unmistakably him. The sound Vivian made was inhuman, a low, visceral groan, like a wounded animal. What is he doing here? She stood up so quickly that the chair fell backward. Dinner, I said calmly. Didn't you say relationships are like stories? Well, every good story needs all the main characters. Andrew looked between us, completely lost. Allie, what's going on? Sit down, Andrew. My voice left no room for argument. You too, James. Vivian, I think you already know your place. For a moment, I thought she would flee. Her eyes darted to the door, calculating distance. But then something shifted in her face. The mask fell completely. What I saw underneath was terrifying. Not anger, not shame. It was emptiness, like looking into a bottomless pit. You think you're smart, she said, her voice dangerously low. Setting up this little play. Bringing him. She pointed at James without looking at him. Do you think this will change anything? That Andrew will suddenly realize he loves me and come running back to you? No, I said. I don't think that. Because Andrew never loved you, Vivian. You know that. Just as you know none of the other men loved you. They were just substitutes. All of them were James. She laughed. It was a broken, painful sound. You know nothing. I know that 20 years ago, you were destroyed. I know that Catherine and James broke you in a way that never healed. I know that you turned that pain into a crusade, convincing yourself that you were proving something, that you were desirable, that you could win, that you could make other people feel what you felt. Shut up. I know you're sick, cancer, stage 3, and that this accelerated everything because you're racing against the clock. Andrew isn't just another conquest. He's the last, the final chance to prove that you weren't left because you were insufficient. I said, shut up, Vivian screamed, and for the first time, tears streamed down her face. Not manipulative tears, real, ugly, desperate tears. Andrew was frozen, looking at her as if he were seeing her for the first time. Viv, James began, his voice breaking. No, she turned to him, and there was so much hatred in her eyes that he recoiled. You have no right. You destroyed me. You left me there, in the church, with 300 people looking at me with pity. You turned me into this. No, I interrupted. He hurt you. Terribly. But you chose what to do with that pain. You chose to turn it into a weapon. You chose to make other women bleed because you bled. Vivian looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something akin to recognition. And you? She whispered. What are you doing now? Isn't this revenge? Aren't you destroying me in the same way you say I destroy others? The question hit me like a punch. Because she was right. I had brought James here to humiliate her. I had set up this confrontation to break her. I had become exactly what I hated. The silence in the room was suffocating. It was Andrew who broke it. I need air, he said, and walked out the front door. James looked at Vivian one last time. I'm sorry, he said. Every day I'm sorry. But this, he gestured to the room, to the chaos. This isn't about me. It never was. It's about you not being able to forgive yourself for still loving me after everything. And then he also left. We stood there, Vivian and I, two women who turned pain into war. What happens now? She asked, her voice small, broken. I looked at her, really looked. I saw the woman who was left at the altar, the woman who spent 6 months hospitalized, the woman who was dying, and yet couldn't stop hurting because hurting was the only thing that made her feel something other than empty. And I saw myself, the woman who was so consumed by revenge that she almost destroyed her own humanity in the process. Now, I said, we both stop. Andrew returned 3 hours later. He found me on the porch, watching the rain that had started to fall, that fine Oregon rain that seemed more like mist than water. He sat beside me without speaking. We stayed like that for long minutes, the silence between us more honest than any conversation we'd had in months. "She's gone?" he asked finally. "Yes." "And James?" "Him too." More silence. Then, "I didn't know. About her past. About everything." "I know. But that doesn't excuse me, does it?" His voice broke. "I let her in. I let her plant doubts. I let her convince me that what we had wasn't enough." I turned to look at him. His eyes were red. He had cried. Andrew, who never cried, not even when his father died. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you let her?" He took a deep, trembling breath. "Because it was easier to believe the problem was our marriage than to admit the problem was me. I felt trapped, not by you, by myself, by the life I had built that suddenly seemed too small, too predictable. And then Vivian appeared, telling me I was more than that I deserved passion and intensity, and," he paused, "and it was easier to believe her than to do the hard work of figuring out who I really was." "And now? Who are you now?" "I don't know," he looked at me. "But I know who I don't want to be. I don't want to be the man who throws away 7 years because he was bored. I don't want to be the man who lets a woman manipulate him because she made him feel special. What about us?" The question hung in the damp air. "I don't know if there's an us anymore," he said, and the honesty hurt more than any lie. "I hurt you, deeply, and you changed into someone I don't recognize. The way you set that up today, the coldness, the calculation. Allie, that's not you." "It wasn't me," I corrected. "But pain changes people, Andrew. You should know that by now." "So what do we do?" I stood up, looking at the rain. "I don't know, but I know what we don't do. We don't pretend nothing happened. We don't go back to routine as if the last few months were just a nightmare. And we don't," my voice broke, "we don't become Vivian and James, people so broken by hurt that they spend decades bleeding." 3 weeks later, I received a letter. It had no sender, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. "Allison, you were right about everything. I spent 20 years blaming James, blaming Catherine, blaming every happy couple I saw. But the truth is, I never forgave myself for still loving him, for not being enough to make him stay, for being so intense that he needed to run away to breathe. You asked me what happens now. The truth is, I don't know if there is a now for me. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe a year, and for the first time, I'm facing the idea of dying without having truly lived, just hurt. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, seeing you today, seeing what you were becoming because of me, was like looking in a mirror, and it was terrifying. You still have a chance not to be me. Don't waste it. V. I folded the letter slowly. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. But it was recognition from a woman who finally saw the monster she had become. Andrew and I started therapy. Not couples therapy, we weren't ready for that yet. Individual therapy. He, to find out why he was so willing to throw away something real for something that seemed more exciting. I, to understand how I almost became the person I was trying to destroy. Revenge is seductive, my therapist, Dr. Patricia, said in a session, because it makes us feel powerful when we feel powerless. But the problem with revenge is that it never satisfies. You destroy the person who hurt you, and then what? You're still hurt. Only now you're also carrying the guilt of what you did. She was right. Even now, weeks later, I would wake up at 3 in the morning seeing Vivian's face. That devastating emptiness when she realized I had dismantled her entire life in front of witnesses. I had won, but it didn't feel like victory. 2 months after dinner, Brielle called me. Vivian is in the hospital, palliative care. She's asking for you.
I didn't want to go. God, how I didn't want to. But something pulled me. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps guilt, perhaps the need for some kind of closure. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and death. Vivian was in a private room, small, sterile. She seemed to have aged 10 years and 2 months. Her hair had completely fallen out. Her skin had that translucent quality of someone close to the end. "You came," she whispered when she saw me. I came. "I don't know why I called you. Maybe because you're the only person who truly saw me. Not the version I showed, the broken thing underneath." I sat in the chair beside the bed. "How are you?" She laughed, a faint but genuine sound. "Dying, but you knew that." She looked at me. "Andrew?" "I don't know yet. We're trying, slowly. Some days are good, others we can barely look at each other." "But you're trying. That's more than I did." She closed her eyes. "You know what's funny? I spent 20 years destroying relationships because I thought I was proving something, that I was desirable, that I was worth choosing. But the person I really needed to choose was myself, and I never did that." "It's not too late." "Don't be condescending. We both know it is." She opened her eyes again. "But you still have time. Time to decide who you want to be. The woman who built a life with Andrew, or the woman who almost destroyed it for revenge." "I can be both," I said. "I can carry both. The woman who loves and the woman who almost lost herself. I don't have to choose only one." Vivian smiled. "Perhaps you are wiser than I." She died 3 weeks later. I didn't go to the funeral. There wasn't one. She had no family, and the few people who knew her didn't want to go. But I planted a gardenia in my garden. Not for her, exactly, but for what she represented. The thin line between pain and destruction, between being a victim and becoming a perpetrator. Andrew and I are together, still, but it's different now. More honest, more fragile. Some days I look at him and see the man who almost left me. Other days I see the man who chose to stay and do the hard work. And he, I imagine, sees the same in me. The woman he loved and the woman who almost crossed an irreversible line. I don't know if we will survive. Statistically, marriages that go through this rarely survive. But we are trying, and maybe trying is all we have. 6 months after dinner, I found a box on the porch. Inside, a book, a first edition of The Great Gatsby, my favorite novel, and a note in Andrew's handwriting. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. But maybe, just maybe, we can also row towards the future, together. If you still want to. I choose you, every day, not because it's easy, but because it's real. A. I held the book against my chest and cried. Not tears of sadness or anger, tears of liberation. Because I finally understood. Vivian didn't destroy my marriage. She only exposed the cracks that were already there. And we, Andrew and I, had the choice to let those cracks destroy us or use them to rebuild something stronger. We chose to rebuild. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast. And some days, I'm still not sure if we made the right choice. But it's our choice. And that, I discovered, is everything. This story shows us that pain does not justify destruction, and that the line between justice and revenge is so thin that we can cross it without realizing. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are themselves bleeding. And sometimes the greatest strength is not to destroy those who hurt us, it's to choose not to become them. Family is not just about blood or legal commitment. It's about choosing, every day, to be better than our worst impulses. It's about recognizing that we all carry darkness, but that we don't have to let it consume us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any emotional stories. Leave in the comments, have you ever faced a choice between revenge and forgiveness? How did you decide? Always remember, you are stronger than your worst moments, and the person you become after the pain says more about you than the pain itself. And you, what do you value more, revenge or peace? Because in the end, you can only choose one.